believe that these conditions actually are out there in the real world. So this is what we would say about God, right? That namely his properties are out there in the real world, and we know they exist, and we know they're true, right?
You say his properties are out there in the real world. Like, are you referring to his attributes, sir?
I'm saying, yeah, they're true subsistences of God.
In the real world, in creation?
Not in creation, but in the real world. Like,
Well,
not all of the real world is creation.
Well, we'll define world. I don't know what you're referring to. World is
World is anything which obtains.
What?
Anything which obtains is part of like the real world.
Obtains what?
Anything which obtains, any single term which has a referent within reality is what we would say out there in the real world.
Okay, so his properties are out there in the real world. I didn't get the relevance of you saying that, to be honest.
Yeah, so the relevance of me saying that is to say that they actually obtained, which comes from me saying that I know what it takes for them to obtain. I know some criteria for them to obtain, right? Like some basic things, because you're trying to say, I think you're trying to say that we either don't know the meaning.
Is created.
What do you say?
The criteria you're using is created, and all has complete dissimilarity to that created concept you're using.
So like the criteria, so are you saying like the criteria that what it takes for these attributes to obtain is created? Is that what you're saying?
No, you were using something. You've lost me. What are you using a method to understand the attributes? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, I'm saying that in philosophy of language, right, to affirm something is to recognize a cognitive content and to say that this actually obtains within the real world, right? And to know that something obtains within the real world is to know its conditions, right? Meaning it's what we would call in Aristotelian philosophy its essence, and to know that that actually is out there in the real world, right? So when I'm saying that, look, for example, I know the cognitive content of a human, right? What that means is I know the conditions for a human to obtain, and I know that those conditions actually did obtain, right? Or I can perceive them to obtain in reality, or I have knowledge of it, right?
Okay, how do you know the conditions of the attributes?
So that's because I know like how they're defined by the theology that we have.
Okay, so how do you define all hearer, all seer?
I don't know exactly how you define them, but like I'm just talking about how we would go around like affirming an attribute. I don't know how we affirm a particular attribute. I haven't studied that, but
okay.
yeah.
So let's say the hadith say Allah descends, and you probably don't take that literally, I'm guessing, but even if so, it's still trying to express his essence. Some people say it's his mercy descending or something. So that's an expression of his essence, but we only know what descending is through creation. We only know because of a created concept in our brain. Same with like mercy, justice, all hearer, all seer, hands, etc. It's using creation, it's doing analogical predication with creation. And did you concede that it is analogical predication?
So if by analogy you mean that the meaning has some similarity with creation, sure. If by analogy you mean that a property of God is shared by creation, then that's not what we believe.
Okay, meaning and property is the same thing.
No, it's not.
If you're describing the attribute, yes.
I can say, look, I can say that there's two entities. Let's call it like sphere E and sphere B, right? And sphere E is red and sphere B is also red. So they share the same predicate, right? Now, if I take nominalism about properties, that predicate would not have an existence, which means that there would be nothing in reality that sphere A has, which sphere B also has, right? So that's what I'm saying. That the similarity is not within something that they share within concrete reality. It's just in meaning.
Okay, so what's their difference is in meaning. No, but when you say meaning, you're using the created concept of meaning, and again, that's created. So it falls back into the same thing that it is complete dissimilarity to that meaning because it's a created concept.
That just makes no sense because meaning
No, it is. we're using you're using your created concept in your mind to understand what all merciful, all just is, all hear, all seer. You're using that created concept in your mind. I think you can agree that your thoughts are created. So,
Yeah, my
we
my thoughts are applications of abstracta, right? And abstracta is going to be something that is not within time and space, right? So my thoughts are within time and space; they're completely created, right? But what I want to say is this: you said that meaning is created. Meaning is an abstract concept. It refers to whatever a content actually implies, right? This is what we call
I
the
don't recall
implication
saying
theory.
meaning was created, but if I did, I was wrong.
Yeah, that you said that meaning is created, and I'm applying a created concept to understand God. So first of all, if you're saying that I am actually using a concept
Okay,
that
when I
creation.
said meaning, I was referring to the created concept in your mind, because obviously your meaning of all merciful, even if you can say you have a like kind of definition, kind of similarity, you're never going to know the true meaning of what merciful means. So you're still using your created concept in your brain to try to understand what this all merciful, all just is. But in the end, your created concept in your brain will always have complete dissimilarity from the essence you're trying to express.
Yeah, so I know the sufficient conditions for the attribute to be true, but I may not know the fullness of the attribute, right? I may not have the full knowledge of like that
Yeah, that
attribute.
was my
That's what.
distinction between the created meaning and the uncreated meaning.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I quite accept that distinction, but what I want to say is that there are some
You
conditions
don't
for
accept
this
that
attribute.
distinction?
One second.
Well, why would you reject that?
Because I don't call concepts created in the sense that the concept which has no place, a concept is just
You're
like
denying we
a.
have created concepts in our mind? That's kind of a absurd take. I've never heard that
I
before.
would not. Yeah, I would not call that a created concept. I would call that a created thought, or what we would call in philosophy of mind a mental property. Right? That's a different thing. So
Well, I
I
use them
want to say.
synonymously.
Right, just 1 second. Yeah, it's just like it would be a category error to say that a concept is created and then equivocated to a thought. A thought
Yeah,
is
well, the
something that.
concepts humans use. That's it's relying on the distinction I was making between humans and the actual objective, true understanding of what the attribute is. Which even if, but I can concede that I don't know truly, because the whole point of analogical predication is you're not it's not univocal predication where you're going to understand it. It's not saying God is creation. It's only saying God is like because he shares these properties in some way, but in greater ontology, greater essence, etc. So we'll never understand truly God's essence, God's mercy. But if God has complete dissimilarity to his creation, you definitely can't understand anything about it, because the created concepts in your mind have complete dissimilarity from the thing you're trying to express.
Yeah, so as I told you, we don't believe there's any similarity between God and creation in the sense that there's something that creation possesses within the real world out there, right? Which God possesses, right? We would not affirm this. What we would affirm, though, is that there's a similarity in meaning, which means that we know what are the conditions for the attribute to obtain, right? And we
Okay,
know.
define mercy.
I'm not going to give you like a definition here, right? Like mercy, as in like for like the category of mercy, which also applies to creation and God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have to find out some quite vague definition, right?
Okay,
I don't have it right now
whatever,
on me.
whatever. So
The point
when
is
you
this, right?
define mercy and you say it's sharing the same meaning, the meaning you're using is a created thought, as you would say, created thought. So it's still non-cognitive for the thing you're trying to express, and
But
I
that's not
don't get
true.
how you. Yeah, it is. It's
Mercy.
not related to the thing you're trying to express. If the thing you're trying to express has complete dissimilarity from the created thought you're using to define it.
Okay, so here's why. So you said that the meaning of mercy is using like I only access that through a creative thought. So okay, first of all, the meaning of something under what we call the entailment theory of meaning, which is that it's to take that the meaning of a content is merely what it commits you to, right? So the meaning of a concept is going to be it's not going to be a thought. First of all, thoughts are things that inhere within an intellect, right? And something can have a meaning even if all intellects are gone, right? So suppose that all the human beings would be gone tomorrow, there would still be a meaning to something, right? Meaning does not take someone to comprehend it for there to be meaning. So
Yeah, that's why I
it's
was.
not correct.
That's why this again. You need to fall back on my. I was making a distinction between our our created concepts of what mercy is, because we can never understand, even me and you, if even if I reject Tansy, I will never understand univocally what God's mercy is, because it's too far out of my nature. But I can at least make a similarity between him and creation in this sense. However, if you, the created concepts you're having in your mind, have complete dissimilarity from the thing you're trying to understand, then you can't use those definitions, even. And
Yeah, I told you that the similarity is going to be in sharing something real. I gave you the example of two spheres, sphere A and sphere B. Sphere A and sphere B possess the redness predicate, right? Now, the redness predicate does not. So if you take, because there's multiple positions, right? There's realism and nominalism about the attributes and predicates. If you take nominalism about attributes and predicates, there would be nothing within reality that they actually share. There would only be a logical term, and sharing logical terms is not quite saying, oh, they're the same, right? It's
yeah,
so
yeah, it's analogical, not univocal.
so
Yeah, it's the
here
same.
so let me just say this, right? So
Because they're
uh,
distinct in some sense, but they're
in my
similar
example
in another
in my
sense.
example just 1 second. In my example, the spheres are both red, yet they do not share similarity within concrete reality. Another example could be is what we would call trope nominalism, wherein a property is just a trope, which is individualized to its bearer, right? In that case, a trope would not be identical to any other trope, right? So we could affirm the existence of the trope. We could know with sufficient conditions. We may not know like the full meaning of it, right? But nonetheless, right? We can know that it's dissimilar from any other trope.
What topic did you just move on to? You kind of just ignore my point. Just
No,
want
I'm
to
just
talk about
giving you.
it.
I'm giving you two
I didn't
answers.
get the square circle example. You said that something can have the same, like it can have the same property. Yeah, but that's called an analogia. That's the same thing that the Quran does with Quran does with creation when it does a predication.
Yeah, and I'm telling you this. So what we affirm is this: we know the sufficient conditions. So we have some cognitive content, right? For which we can affirm the existence of these attributes. How do we affirm the existence of these attributes? We know there's sufficient conditions to obtain, right? And we can perceive.
Wait, define what you just said.
Okay, so
So,
to know. So when you're saying that like for example, whether something exists or not, what you're saying is that there's sufficient conditions for it to exist.
oh, is that what you're
Correct?
saying? Just that it exists? Okay.
Okay, it's partly when I'm saying a dog exists. What does that mean? If not, I know what it takes for a dog to exist, and I can perceive that these conditions are met.
Wait, listen, my phone's on 1%.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when I'm saying that I affirm the existence of an attribute, what I'm saying is I'm making a two-part claim. Claim number one is I know what actually what conditions have to be met for this attribute to obtain, and the second affirmation is I can see those conditions being met. Right?
I don't
So
see the relevancy of that.
it's very relevant because I can affirm the existence of God's attribute without implying any similarity between those attributes and creation.
Okay, yeah, you can affirm they're existing, but you won't be able to understand what the hell they are.
I don't need to understand them fully. I don't need to understand their
No,
full implication.
again, I just explained my point. I explained my position. I don't believe in univocal predication with God and His creation. I believe in analogical predication, that there's similarities, and that's how we understand who God is. Obviously, I'm not saying God is identical to His creation. That would be blasphemy. That would be pantheism. But you can't understand Him in any way if you say He's completely. I think there's another term predication for it, but you do say it's completely
Equivocal
dissimilar.
predication.
Yeah, equivocal. That was it.
Equivocal. Yeah. Anyway, so this
Wait.
when
So
we're saying
you're saying you do equivocal and analogy. How is that on an oxymoron?
okay, so there's going to be univocal, equivocal, and analogical, right? Now, when we're saying that God's attributes are completely dissimilar from creation, the claim that we're making is that there's nothing within concrete reality such that it is present within God's attributes, sorry, and that it's also equally transitionally present within the attribute of a creation. This is Ibn Taymiyyah's position. He takes nominalism about attributes to get rid of this problem that you're presenting here, which is that,
So your position on Tanzi is that it just means God's attributes aren't identical to creation. Well, then like every other religion would be.
not just that. My claim is much more pretentious than what you've just presented. That's a very modest claim. That's not what
Well,
I'm saying.
that's what you were laying out, really.
No, that's not the only thing I've been laying out. I didn't just say, oh, God's attributes are distinct from creation. I said that there's nothing within concrete reality such that those attributes possess, and transitionally, the attributes of creation also possess. Right?
Okay. That includes when you're defining the attributes, you still have to use your created attribute of intellect to understand them, and that created attribute of intellect cannot understand something that which has complete dissimilarity to their thoughts, their created thoughts, whatever. And so this what it leads to is
So there's two
in
things you need to
essence
do.
actus purus. I mean, where all the attributes are one attribute. There's no distinction between any of them.
So what your argument is this, right? You're using you're using your creative thoughts to understand like God's attribute, and you can't actually understand it because it's completely dissimilar. And what's the conclusion out of this? What is the conclusion you're trying to get to?
So that you can't understand God using the Quran.
Okay, well, okay. So if by you cannot understand God, you mean that I do not know every single true proposition about God? Sure, I'm willing to grant you that.
No,
If by
that's a straw man. That's a straw.
I think
I've
I didn't
adopted
say you
my
said that, by
position.
the way. I didn't say you said that. I'm asking if
Okay.
you said that. Okay, I didn't strawman you.
Well,
If I was strawman you,
Okay. I forgive you for accusing me of straw man, but I've explained my position 5 times now. I never claimed it was univocal predication, but I'm saying analogical predication and equivocal predication is first of all an oxymoron, and second of all, I'm telling you that you won't have any idea about God's essence. Now, I have using analogical
I do have
predication.
an idea about God's essence, namely that it exists, that it is attributed with power, it is attributed with like all these attributes, right? So I do have an idea, but I just want to touch on your argument. Your argument is that you can only affirm that which you have an idea of, I guess, right?
That's not true. That's not what I'm arguing at all. So,
Okay, how about you lay down your argument
if
in
we
a
believe
syllogism?
Allah exists, my main argument here, this doesn't necessarily refer to Islam, but I just want you to concede, and over Muslims concede that they're not going to understand the expressions. Ibn Taymiyyah explains them as expressions of God's essence. They can express God's essence because your created thoughts and definitions, and especially when it compares them to things in creation like all hearer, all seer, all merciful, all just, descending, having hands. These are all things they're definitely comparing to creation. And whether you not say that's a similarity, you only understand those things because of your creative thoughts in your mind, and your created definitions, your created understandings of these are going to have complete dissimilarity. So essentially, when you say he's all merciful, it's the same as the other attributes. It's at least ADS, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think you're still conflating between my thoughts being created and the meaning somehow, and you're inferring that the meaning
I
is
know
created.
there's an objective meaning, and the distinction between the objective meaning and the created thoughts for understanding it is a reason. I'm talking about creation understanding God here. I'm not talking about God understanding God.
Right, but like this is what I'm
By the way,
telling you,
that's
right?
been
So
5 minutes.
if you're trying to say that because my thoughts are created, therefore any meaning that I'm thinking about has to be created, I would disagree with this, right? That there's no need to I don't see any reason to believe in this. So if your argument is because I'm still trying to understand your argument,
That's
right?
a created thought. What do you mean? You're using created thoughts to understand God's essence. You're using your created intellect to understand God's essence. But your created concept of what it is, your created definition, has complete dissimilarity to what it's expressed.
just because my thought about God is
I don't
created, it
even
is.
need to use a false argument. If the Quran uses things like all hearer, all seer, we literally only know what those things are because of creation.
Yeah, I would not say. Well, so if
You
by
can't
this you
even
mean that
define
we.
those things
One
without
second, one second,
creation.
one second. If by this you mean that we know the meaning of these attributes through revelation, sure, of course, I'll grant you that, right? But
Wait,
if by this you
what does
mean
that mean?
Okay, so if by this you mean that the meaning of these attributes are affirmed through our knowledge of revelation, sure, I'll grant you that. If by this you mean that because our thoughts are created, then anything we understand must equally be created, then I will not grant you that.
So you don't think your definition, your understanding of things are created and limited?
So I think me thinking about them, the thought, the mental property, what we call in philosophy of mind, the mental property that has intentionality towards that subject that I'm thinking about, that is created, right?
No, the thing is,
However,
even if you don't concede that, which I think you should, you literally, the thing is, humans can only understand what these attributes are. Their creative thoughts only analyze and conceptualize what things are because of creation. We can only conceptualize of what that all hearer, all seer is because of creation. It literally has a name from creation. That's what I mean. I don't think you're saying Allah has eyes, but we are understanding that using creation. It's finding and it's doing analogical predication. And can you explain to me again, sir, how doing analogical predication and equivocal predication isn't a oxymoron because you're saying there's complete dissimilarity and there's also similarity?
yeah, so just 1 second. Let me just hopefully understand your argument, and then I'll like go ahead and tackle that subject. So
Okay.
you said, so like from what you said, I can interpret that in two ways, right? In two ways. So the first way is I interpret your argument as saying, um, well, you know about God through through your experience of creation, right? Meaning you communicate and you perceive the textual revelation. Then sure, I'll grant you that, right? But merely because that is true, it does not mean, right, that God's actual whatever I affirm of God has to be created. That would not follow. If you're saying, right, that because my thoughts, right, which are my thoughts when I think about God and I affirm His attributes, that because these thoughts are created, therefore the meaning of these attributes and their reality is created. No, that would also not follow. So
Okay. I don't know. It feels like you're actually intentionally shawmanning me at this point. Never did I say that the meaning of something, the objective meaning of something, is created because someone else thought of it in a different way. No, I'm saying
didn't say
that
that
if you
either.
have a created, if you're using your created intellect, your limited intellect, your limited understanding of God, you're going to have a created concept. You literally, how are you going to say it's not created if it's not fully understanding God's essence? That's a weird understanding because it would have to be wrong.
So are you saying
Also,
I need to fully understand God's essence to know that it's not created?
no, no, I'm not saying you. I'm not arguing that we all have to believe it's fully understanding, but I'm saying it must be created thought, and if something's created, and the reason I want to elaborate on how something is created, it still entails a complete dissimilarity thing, is because we again like all here, all seer, descending, having hands, etc. Can you define those things without creation?
So, like, if by this you mean, can I define these things without like revelation or like revelatory comments? I don't think so, right? I think that I know their meaning through what I've been told by the theologians and and the textual revelation. Um, um,
So
if
again, it goes back to my point. That's me proving that your creative thoughts have complete dissimilarity to what the actual essence is. Um, so you agreed that your definition is created if you're only using things within creation to understand that essence. So I think it does entail that a created thought would still have complete
yeah,
dissimilarity to the
no.
actual meaning.
So look, I wasn't strawmanning you because you just said that because I'm using things within creation, then therefore my definition is created. So far, like I don't know why you
Yeah,
accuse me
your
of.
human definition, not the objective truth of the definition. Because
Okay, so
again, like I said, we're talking about humans understanding God here. That's the whole argument. I'm not talking about God, the objective truth, understanding Himself.
okay, 1 second. So a definition is going to be okay. So like for example, the definition of an attribute, like it's going to be like the sufficient criteria for the attribute to obtain within reality, right? So I know the definition for these attributes, right? To some extent. Obviously, I don't have the full knowledge of all the true propositions about these attributes. That is impossible. That's why these attributes are called ineffable, right? But
Yeah.
however, I know why they exist. I know the reason behind their existence, namely that their conditions are met, right? Now,
But
me
you know
having
why
this knowledge,
attributes exist?
one second. Me having this knowledge is not imported from me, for example, looking at some creature and being like, okay, this is how this creature's mercy works, therefore this is how like God's mercy has to work. No, no, no. The reason why I know the definition of these attributes, meaning there's sufficient conditions to obtain, is because I've received this from revelatory knowledge, not from specifically examples of in entities instantiating the property of mercy. No, no, from revelatory knowledge. That's very different from seeing an instance.
Okay, that's interesting to say that it doesn't come from any influence at all. Understanding
From
what
any
mercy
instance,
is.
it comes
And
from
I
pure
don't think that
conceptual
Quran
knowledge.
ever defines what it means to be all merciful, all just. What does it mean to be all merciful? I'd imagine when it defines it, it's going to use creation as an example.
Yeah, so if by meaning you mean like it's sufficient conditions to obtain, yes, I do have knowledge of that. If you mean the full extent of like what exactly that entails, I may not have knowledge of that
Okay,
with
yeah,
regards to God's
you
mercy.
don't have to have full objective truth of what the essence is, but if you're using the created definition, and many of these definitions are influenced because we only know what it means to be an all-hearer, all-seer because of creation and instances in creation, and what it means to be just in creation, what it means to be merciful in creation. I don't know where you're getting this from, that all attributes are directly explained by the revelation. I don't know which Quran verse directly explains many of the attributes, but I'd like to say that. And even if it did define it, it would still have to use analogical predication to help creation understand it. So, and then your understanding of that would then follow createdness, and at least just again not understanding something which has completely dissimilar. So I'll let you respond to that. I'm gonna get off after your point. So.
Yeah, so look, so I don't know exactly why you're still accusing me of stillmanning you when I've like given two interpretations of your argument. If you think I'm stillmanning you, I think it's better for you to like make up a syllogism to make it like much more clear, right?
Okay.
That's insofar as I understand you, you're saying that because my understanding or like of these definition is from creation, therefore like I cannot affirm them because these things are uncreated things. Yeah, I would not grant that, right? I take my understanding on these attributes to come from revelatory knowledge, which happens to be revealed within creation, right? And it gives me like the sufficient conditions for these attributes to obtain, and thereby allows me to know if these conditions are met. And once I know when these conditions are met, I know that they actually exist, right? So I don't see, I really don't take this idea that just because I take my information from like creation, therefore like I cannot affirm the attributes. That seems to
Okay.
not follow. And if you're accusing me of strawmanning, I invite you to make up a syllogism.
Okay. I'm gonna respond to that. I'll give myself a go. So number one, if God is like nothing like His creation in Islam,
Yeah, can you
then
write it
give him.
down?
Okay, let's read it out. Okay, if God is nothing like His creation in Islam, then giving Him names of analogical predication is a non-cognitive statement. Now let me justify this. We only know, like you said, the revelation, your understanding of things is relative to creation. We only know because of mercy. Many of the sources are from the world, justice in the world. We only know what descending is according to Hadith. In the world, we only know what it means to have hands. Hands is a big one because who the hell knows what Allah's hands are without creation? We often inflict our human understanding from creation onto understanding the essence of God. However, if our human understanding, now I'm not saying since we have a different human understanding, it changes the objective meaning of anything. No, it's just saying we have a created, distinct understanding, which in Islamic theology would have complete dissimilarity to the actual understanding of the attribute. It would have no similarity to the actual meaning of the attribute. So in
Right,
that sense,
look, premise one. The premise one was something like if we are affirming that the attributes are based on analogical predication, then we do not have cognitive content, correct? Is that what you said?
it's kind of a conclusion, but yeah.
Okay, cool. So since you said that, let's go ahead and define what cognitive content is. In philosophy of language, cognitive content is what a what exactly is the implications of a semantical semiotic sign, or like a collection of semiotic signs, aka semantics, right? So cognitive content is just what exactly something means. Now, I take what we call the entailment theory of meaning. Now, the entailment theory of meaning is basically to say that the meaning of something is what it commits you to, right? So now, for something to have a meaning, or for me to understand the meaning of something, right? AKA to have cognitive content is for me to understand its entailments, right? I understand some of the entailments of these attributes. Therefore, I do know the cognitive content of these attributes. So it's actually quite false to say that just because I'm affirming analogical predication, that they won't have cognitive content.
Wait, define cognitive content.
Cognitive content is going to be the meaning of a message, right? And I told you under the entailment theory of meaning.
Why would I say if you affirm analogical predication, you can't have cognitive content? Why would I affirm that?
You just said that as your first premise.
Okay, okay. So you're saying the full understanding of something. If you're defining that as cognitive, then yeah, analogical predication doesn't give you a full understanding of something, the full objective meaning of it. It just gives you similarities. Things. It's analogical. It's analogy by comparing, predication by comparing. So again, you're just. Do you concede that we only know we know what mercy is? We know what it means to be an all hearer, all seer, or we can kind of rationalize and conceptualize what it means to be all hearer, all seer because of creation. What it means to descend and have hands because of creation.
If by this you mean that I only know what it means to have hearing because I've seen an entity that hears, no, I don't need such knowledge. I don't need an instantial knowledge. I just need revelatory content. I need revelational knowledge. Revelational knowledge is sufficient for me to know the meaning of that. And if let's say I didn't have
What
revelational knowledge.
revelation defines what it means to be an all hearer, all seer?
So one second. So
It relies on
let's
you
say I
using
didn't have.
revelation. So where's this concept of using revelation to understand every attribute?
One second. I'm just saying that my knowledge of God's attributes are not derived from instances within creation. So I'm saying that me knowing that God hears.
I think you and me both know that when you think of all hearer, all seer, we're thinking God can hear everything and he sees everything. He sees all our actions. So we're using the created concept of what it means to hear and see. And
But this is not based on an instantial knowledge. Me knowing what it means. One second. Me knowing what it means to affirm that God hears and what it partially means for God to hear is not derived from me seeing an entity that hears. No, I don't need the instantial knowledge, aka the knowledge of an instance of a hearing entity, for me to know what it means to affirm.
Means because of creation.
So again, if by that you mean instantial knowledge, that's not quite true, and I've denied that, because I can get that type of knowledge from revelatory content, and even if I don't get that type of knowledge from revelatory content, I can get it from intuitional content, and even if I don't get that from intuitional.
Okay, let me ask you, where are you getting this revelatory question from? The Quran?
So, like from what I know is that some of these attributes are explained by the scholars, right? So these scholars are going to contribute to what we call the revelatory content, right? They're going to tell us.
So they can't give you an objective, truthful definition. They're just it just falls back into. It doesn't matter who they are. They can be.
Wait, how does this follow? They can't give you an objective definition. First of all, what does it mean to have an objective definition? Are you saying a definition which is
an actual full understanding? So again, I'm not saying it's bad to not have
if by a full understanding you mean every single true proposition about something, no, not about God's attributes, because that would mean for us to have full knowledge of these attributes. If by that you mean giving us a partial understanding, sure.
Exactly. So if they only give you a partial understanding, they're using a created concept. Thank you.
No, they're not. They're not using a created concept. That
it's the created meaning of what the objective truth of the attribute is, because we humans can't fully rationalize. We only rationalize using creation instances in creation. So, and
that is not true.
Okay, let's say you use the Quran as a revelatory content. The Quran is still created.
look, let me give you an example. So there's going to be multiple types of ways to know partially the meaning of some of God's attributes. There's going to be revelatory content, there's going to be instantial knowledge, there's going to be intuitional knowledge, and there's going to be conceptual knowledge. Now, conceptual knowledge is just me thinking, and I could be blind all my life. I could never even see an entity that hears. Give me a second. I could never even see an entity that hears, and yet still affirm like something that hears without like prior knowledge or experience of it. That's what we would call conceptual knowledge. Intuitional knowledge is for me to have that as my intuition within my own, like be born with that type of knowledge.
My
Now,
argument isn't
one second, just let me finish.
because you're kind of
Just
gonna
let me finish. It's
my
important you let
argument
me
isn't
finish.
that you can't affirm something without a full understanding of it. I agree. I don't affirm God's attributes. I don't reject God's attributes because I don't have
I'm
a
not
full
saying you do
understanding.
that, by the way, but
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that you don't have any understanding of them if you're using created concept. That's not. I'm not saying you can't affirm them. You can affirm whatever you like.
yeah, I saw. So if by that you mean I need to have instantial knowledge for me to affirm something about God's attributes, I denied that. I told you that's not correct, and I'm
I
still
agree
waiting
with
for an argument.
that. You're right to deny.
What do you say?
You're right to deny. You cannot. You don't have to have a full understanding of something to affirm it exists. I'm just saying
Again,
you won't have a
one
clue
second.
about
The topic
anything
is not full
if it
or
hasn't
partial
been.
understanding. The topic is where do we get that understanding? The topic is the source, right? So forget about partial or full. Okay, let's just stick to here. So your argument is this. It seems to be this at least, right? You haven't syllogized it yet, so I can only formalize it for you. I can do the
Did I
job
not
for you.
syllogize it?
You didn't. You went ahead to premise one. Then when I told you that, well, why would I believe that? You even forgot what was your premise one. But that's fine. So let me just go ahead and like try to stillman your argument. So your argument was something going on like this, right? So my knowledge of God's attributes is going to be derived from creation. And by creation, you mean specifically, solely, right? Instantial knowledge. Namely, what is instantial knowledge? Knowledge of instances of similar cases. And I told you that's not true. That's not what I believe, right? I don't believe that I know the meaning of God's attributes, whether partial or full, because of an instance. So when I'm saying God hears, I'm not saying it that, oh, I've seen something that hears in creation, therefore I know the meaning of why God hears or that he hears. No. That's called instantial knowledge. That's
Okay,
not
so
why I affirm it.
your other
One
example is
second.
revelatory, which you use scholars for, and
Right.
they fall into the same thing as you, even though they're
No,
higher form.
because scholars do not use instantial knowledge. They may not use instantial knowledge. They may use conceptual knowledge. They may use intuitional knowledge that they're born with, right? Or knowledge that the religion reveals, right? Not so. I don't think scholars would say something like, look, oh, God hearing is like how creation has an ear. No. Scholars would never affirm that there's like a reality such as an ear that God has, and and creation has. That would not be true.
Okay, exactly. So even it's the thing is, it's not going to be a univocal. It's going to be an analogy. We're going to find similarities between God. I guess God can hear what we're saying. He doesn't need an ear for that, but it's comparing creation, which does need an ear for that. And again, if you're going to compare, that's analogical predication. Analogical predication literally means to find a similarity between two things.
Yeah, so like for example, the analogy is going to be in meaning, not in reality. This is why Ibn Taymiyyah in his book on I think it's the sharh on like the nuzul, right, the descent of Allah. The similarity is not in reality, in concrete reality, because Ibn Taymiyyah believes in nominalism. If you know what nominalism is about attributes, is to affirm that these attributes do not possess their own existence by themselves within concreta, and they're causally efficacious. No, Ibn Taymiyyah does not believe this. Therefore, when we're saying that God hears, we're not saying that there's something that God has, which is transitionally true of creation, such as, for example, all of
Why would
God
it be
hears.
exempt? Why would it be exempt in meaning?
What do you say?
Why would it be exempt in meaning?
So, like, why would the meaning be the same and yet not like reality be the same?
Yeah, why would it be exempt from having similarities in meaning but not in ontology?
Because we affirm that God is completely dissimilar from creation, and what that means is, again, as I told you, there is nothing which is.
But the scholars use a created concept.
If by this you mean that the concept is derived from instantial knowledge for the seventh time, I will deny that. If by this you mean that the
Okay,
scholars
it
use,
doesn't even it doesn't have to like come from birds chirping, so you know what it means to hear them. It doesn't have to come from that. It can come from like you gave me an example of scholars understanding it. They're just conceptualizing it using created concepts. So those
yeah,
created
no,
concepts would have complete dissimilarities to the things I'm trying to explain.
yeah. So if when you're saying created concept, you means that these scholars within time and space think about the concept that they received from the revelation. Sure. Okay. Cool. If by this you mean that they use knowledge from hearing creation that has similarity between one another, like you speaking and me speaking, there's quite similarity between it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you mean, so 1 second, if you mean that a scholar is looking at a person who hears through an ear, and the ear is not like a composite, right? And he's saying, look, God hears in this way, namely that he's using instantial knowledge to base off his claim that God hears. No, that's not how we affirm it. We affirm it based on either revelatory knowledge, which is the primary mean to knowing something about God, or we affirm it by like conceptual knowledge or intuitional knowledge. There's three other ways than
Where does the
instantial
scholar
knowledge.
get his knowledge?
What do you say?
The scholar just Does the scholar just magically know what it means to
The
be an all
scholar
hearer,
is
all seer?
the scholar. So when you're speaking about God, you're deriving your knowledge from these three sources. So either the scholar got it from another scholar, which got it from the prophet or a companion, or either the scholar was born with this correct concept, right, to explain this.
Was born. Oh my gosh! So again, if it's not the objective understanding of it, then it has to be a created concept. So it wouldn't
One
have.
second, what does it mean if it's not the objective understanding of it? It has to be a creative concept. So first,
Cause
define me what it
the
means
only
to be
way
the.
to have an objective understanding of God's attributes is to have an uncreated conception.
Okay, so if by this you mean that the conception must be received from God Himself, I can agree with you. That's why we have revelatory knowledge, because it comes from God.
No,
If
that's not
by
what it's in. Because
Okay, well,
again,
so what does
if
it
that
mean
was
to have
true, then the
uncreated
Quran
concept?
wouldn't use analogical predication to explain God's essence.
What does it mean?
It would use univocal
Can God?
predication.
Okay, let's say I was blessed enough to talk to God. Could God give me what you call an uncreated concept?
Um, I don't think it'd be innate. It would. It would. I don't think it would be in his nature to give someone all knowingness.
No. Like an uncreated concept, like an understanding of an uncreated concept. Could God
Yeah,
give me a partial understanding of
if
such?
you truly understood God's nature, I feel like you would be.
Not
But I
fully,
would.
not fully. Understand basic things. Like I know God's nature exists. That I don't need to know like the
That's
fullness.
fine. Yeah, that's analogical predication. But if you're so, can you define like let me try to define mercy. Um,
I don't know the exact definition of God's mercy, so
even while the scholars are defining mercy, they're going to use analogical predication.
if by this again, this is the same. This is the ninth or eighth time. If by this you mean that scholars are looking at creation, namely at an instance of an entity which has an attribute that is named or sounds phonetically the same. Phonetically, you know what phonetics mean.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So if by this you mean that scholars are using the attribute of an entity that sounds phonetically the same, and they're saying that everything that is said about that attribute in creation is transitionally said the same about God, then no, I would not say so, right? This is very important. This is why you assume that scholars are looking at creation and they're saying, look, this attribute that creation has, God has it, and everything true about this attribute is equally transitionally true about God. No. That's not how scholars do it.
Dude, that's. I'm not saying like a scholar looks at someone hearing and he says that's how God hears. Okay, I'm saying the scholars look at that and find a similarity between creation and Allah, and then they compare it. And the Quran says, "Would you agree? Analogical predication. It's predication by comparing, literally. And if you're comparing the property of a human hearing with the property of Allah hearing, that's finding a similarity between Allah and creation.
So if the comparison is in meaning and not in reality,
That's not in meaning.
Okay, so then if you're saying there's a comparison or something shared within reality between what was it? What did you say? Hearing? Did you say hearing?
Okay, no, I said there's a similarity in property. I say there's similarity in property. That doesn't mean I have the same ontology as God. I say there's similarity in the, like, because we're made in the image of God. We have the attributes. We just have a disformed, limited. So it's not the same in ontology, but it's a similarity in ontology.
Yeah,
So
I'm making a more pretentious claim. I'm not just saying that God's hearing is distinct from the hearing of creation. I'm saying it's all like it's much more than distinct, right? It's totally dissimilar, right? So what I'm saying is that there's nothing to God's hearing. So for example, creation would have a, I don't know, an ear which has, I don't know, the ear is made up of like, I don't know, like like ear parts, right? Now, it is true that creation hears by an ear which has parts, but it would not be true transitionally that God hears by an ear, right? So
yeah.
we would negate reality being the same for God and creation. We would say that there's a meaning similarity, yes. The meaning of God hearing is somewhat similar to how creation hears, but we would not say that there's a reality shared between those two.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you. Let me ask you. What does it mean to be created in the image of God? When Adam was created in the image of God.
Yeah, I don't have knowledge of this. I cannot like respond to you about this.
Okay. I'm gonna go sleep now, dude. It was good talk. If you want, I can carry on another day.
Creed. Hey.